Today on SuperSoul Sunday, best-selling author, TED Talk sensation, and thought leader Elizabeth Gilbert.
I just want to show up for the whole ride.
Damn it, I love that. I love that.
We first met on The Oprah Show to discuss her memoir, Eat, Pray, Love.
People have come to me and said, how can I do what you did? And I'm like, well, first of all, you shouldn't do what I did. The only thing you need to do is ask yourself the questions I was asking myself. That's what you need to do. And if you listen to that, I guarantee that you'll get your own journey.
The book became a cultural phenomenon, topping the New York Times bestseller list for nearly 4 years. It's been translated into over 30 languages and was a box office hit movie starring Julia Roberts. In 2014, Elizabeth joined me for the Life You Want tour.
Don't you dare give up on the question that burns inside of you about the world and your place within it.
On SuperSoul Sunday, we continued our conversation.
There's always another level up. There's always another ascension, more grace, more light. Your job.
Today, I talked with Elizabeth about losing the woman she says was her source of light, spiritual portal, and partner, Rhea Elias, to pancreatic and liver cancer.
She was such a force of nature, and she went out like a storm at sea, and it was brutal, and it was beautiful, and it was true to who she was.
She shares the deeply profound lessons she has learned from Rhea about love, mercy, and letting go.
The honor in grief is the rejoicing of having loved somebody so much that their departure breaks you.
Plus, Elizabeth discusses her anticipated new novel, City of Girls.
What I wanted to tell was the story of girls who are promiscuous, and then they continue to have rich and interesting lives after that.
Welcome.
Hey,
Welcome. Hey.
Here we are again.
I have to say, when I first met you and we were celebrating, reveling in Eat, Pray, Love, I said then that you were a carrier of the light. We could see that in you. And even after all that you've been through, love and death and love and everything, that you still carry that light.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that.
Still so strong in you.
Thank you for saying that.
Still so strong in you.
That flame has flickered. The wick has gone down at various times over the last few years. But honestly, Oprah, I came here to live a life fully, all of it, and I'll take it. I'll take all of it. I'll take the whole thing, because I don't want to miss it. I don't want to have come all this distance to live a human life and miss the experience. So I just want to show up for the whole ride.
Damn it, I love that. I love that.
I came here to do this.
Yeah.
All of it.
And so you just embrace whatever shows up, you embrace it.
Maybe not in the moment that it's actually happening and horrible, but there's, even in the worst moments of watching Rhea die, there was something I knew, and it was that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. This is the worst thing I've ever been in, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Which is the essence of everything that I talk about in this format of SuperSoul, is that being able to be in the present moment and to make peace with whatever that moment is showing up for you. Yeah. That's when you have reached the spiritual heights as a human being.
Yeah, and to figure out what am I being asked to do and learn and grow out of this.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now. What is this moment here to offer me, to teach me, Yeah.
And if I'm going to assume that this is a friendly universe, and I keep assuming it, oftentimes despite all evidence, then why is this being offered to me in this amount of pain?
Were you writing your new book through all of that pain with Rhea?
I started working on this book 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I started doing a ton of research. It's about New York City in the 1940s, showgirls, theater. And the vision that I always had for it was a big, happy, frolicsome, I wanted to go down like a champagne cocktail, like a lighthearted, giddy book.
Well, it feels like a fun, lighthearted romp.
That's it. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted it to do. Like, I want it to go down easy, and before you know it, you're done with it, and you've had this great ride. And to have
That's why it's great for summer.
Exactly.
And that's probably why you're releasing it.
That's probably why, because my publishers are not fools. It's a fun, lighthearted book.
Yeah.
So I got all the research done, and I was about to sit down and start writing it, and that's when I got the phone call saying that my best friend, who really had truly for years been the most important person to my heart and my life, had terminal cancer. My life at that minute just absolutely shifted. Within the course of a week, my entire life radically changed. I ended up leaving my marriage, going to take care of her in her sickness, spent the next 18 months at her side, and the last thing I could imagine caring about was a novel about showgirls in the 1940s, a happy, like gleeful, sexy. I couldn't begin to imagine ever caring about it again. So I didn't do anything with it for 18 months. And then very soon after she died, I don't know, I got a message from the mothership saying the best thing you could do for yourself right now is write that book. It's going to bring you back to life. So I started writing it right after she died, and it did. This happy, fun, frolicsome light book I wrote during the deepest grief.
It's so interesting because, well, now you explain it, because I was like, how are you writing that, going through what we all knew you were going through? So you waited until she had passed.
Yeah.
And no doubt, Rhea left the spirit of her and the light of her with you, and that's why you were able to do
I think so.
City of Girls.
I think so. I felt her with me while I was doing it. I talked to her the whole time I was doing it, and I was trying to crack her up while I was writing it.
What a perfect name, though. What a perfect name, City of Girls.
Oh, thank you.
How would you describe the book? I say it's a fun, lighthearted romp.
That's good. I'll go with that.
Good. Okay.
Oprah Winfrey, fun, lighthearted romp. It is a joyous novel about New York City in the 1940s, about showgirls, about theater, about actresses, it's actually deeply about promiscuous girls and about girls being very wild in their youth. But it's written like a fake memoir from the point of view of a woman in her 90s looking back at her youth when she was wild and crazy.
You know, it's interesting because we don't have permission to be promiscuous.
Yeah.
And I remember growing up that was the one thing, and this reminded me so much of it, that the one thing in our neighborhood, in our culture, was like called being fast. Yeah. Oh, she's fast.
Yeah.
She's too fast. Yeah. And so it was so frowned upon, and yet you write about characters who are willing to release that at a time when it also was frowned upon.
It's always been frowned upon, and it's still frowned upon, and those girls are still ostracized, and there are still women who have a tremendous amount of sexual curiosity and courage and bravery and a kind of desire to live on the edge, and that's what this book is about. It's about those kind of girls.
Well, I love this part of the book where you say, I could have spent the rest of my life trying to prove that I was a good girl, but that would have been unfaithful to who I really was. I believed that I was a good person, if not a good girl, but my appetites were what they were. So I gave up on the idea of denying myself what I truly wanted. Then I sought ways to delight myself. As long as I stayed away from married men, I felt that I was doing no harm. Anyway, at some point in a woman's life, she just gets tired of being ashamed all the time. And after that, she's free to become whoever she truly is. Say it, girl.
Amen. You found it. That, to me, is the most essential part of the entire book. And by the way, can I just sit here and have you read the entire the entire thing to me? It makes me so happy to hear you read it.
That, to me, is the essential part of the book.
That's it. That's what the whole book is about. And now when she's writing that piece, she's writing it from her 50s. So the book begins with her at 19. She goes to New York City. She goes on a bender. She falls in with a group of showgirls who are all very wild. Her appetites are what they are, and she just jumps right in with them. This is not to say that there are no consequences. This is what I want to point out. What I wanted to say in this book is that I wanted to write a counterpoint to all the stories that are told of girls who are promiscuous and their lives are destroyed by it. And what I wanted to tell was the story of girls who are promiscuous, and then they continue to have rich and interesting lives after that. And while they had consequences from it, and while things might have been difficult, they survived it. And not only survived, but maybe at some point look back on it in their later years and go, there's a lot of fun that I was having during that time.
I'm glad I did that.
I'm kind of glad I did that. And so she's writing that while she's in her 50s, looking back at herself at 19, but she wouldn't have been able at 19 to articulate what she was doing. She was just following these urges and wanting to be as daring as the wild girls she was running around with.
When you look back on your own life at 19 and the girl that you were, what would you say to her now?
Nothing she would have listened to or respected or obeyed. So I could tell her all kinds of things, but she's still going to go off and do exactly what she was going to go do. You know, like when I look back at her face, I see someone who is committed to the path that she was on and had to be, because it took me to where I am now. But you know, they say that every novel is a memoir. And every memoir is a novel.
Yes.
That if you really want to know what somebody's like, read the novels that they write. That's my memoir.
I thought I was talking. I knew that was you, of course.
I didn't have to do any research to describe what it's like to be a young, fast girl.
Yes.
Because that's what I was. And there was no stopping me. You know,
Yeah.
I wanted to experience everything, Oprah, and I did pay consequences for it. But I also kind of get why I was like that.
But what I think is so interesting about City of Girls is that so many adult women and men spend time regretting actually what they may have done in their youth or punishing themselves for actually being a sexual being.
Yeah.
And your intention for writing this was to say, release that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you find writing about women's sexuality in the 40s, in the era of City of Girls, compared to the world today with Me Too and Time's Up and...
Well, I started working on this book before Me Too started, and it was interesting that it intersected, that I was writing this book that was about a certain kind of female sexuality when a very different conversation is going on right now. It was important to me when I sat down to write it that I didn't make these girls prematurely woke. You can be a strong, powerful female character, but you can't have access to information that didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
Everything I ever write is going to be from a feminist perspective because I'm a feminist, but I tried to not have them be ahead of themselves in terms of understanding their
So
relationships.
they're not woke, they're waking
They're
up.
not woke, but they're waking. And there comes a moment in the book where for instance, there's an incident where that's kind of the hinge upon which all the drama in the book occurs, where she makes a very big mistake. A bunch of situations blow up. And she looks back on it later, and it takes her decades to realize, wait a minute, the girls got banished, but the guys was fine. He got to keep his position and his prestige and his marriage. And why did we get thrown out of town? Like, why did that happen? But it took her 20 years to realize that there was maybe something unfair about that. And certainly at the time in 1940, she wouldn't have had that awareness. She would have just felt ashamed and that she was, as she was labeled, a dirty little whore. But the guy was
Which
not
is
labeled that.
which is being labeled a dirty little whore is the thing that everybody's always trying to run away from because everybody wants to be the good girl. The good girl, of course.
But I believe you can be a good person without necessarily being a good girl. And I don't think those things are mutually exclusive.
And that's what you're telling us in City of Girls.
I hope to.
Yes, yes.
I hope to.
Coming up, in 2016, Elizabeth announced to her followers on social media that she was ending her 9-year marriage to Jose Nunez, the man she famously met and fell in love with at the end of Eat, Pray, Love. 2 months later, in another social media post, Elizabeth revealed she was in love with her best friend of 15 years, Rhea Elias. The new couple celebrated in 2017 with what Elizabeth calls a simple, spontaneous ceremony of love. Well, let's talk about what's happened in these years since we last sat down.
Yeah.
So when you got the notice that Rhea had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, would you say you were happily married at the time?
I would, and there's a limit to how much I want to talk about the marriage, just out of respect to somebody who I still love
Jose.
and care about deeply. But
Are y'all still friends?
I still love and care about him deeply.
Okay, good. So I'll leave it at that.
That's we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
When
Well, you know, so many people who read Eat, Pray, Love were vested in you holding on to that forever because that love that you all found was like our love too. Right. And so when you posted that you were going to be leaving, I mean, people felt like it was somebody they knew.
Yeah, but they were so loving, Oprah. You know, like if you read the comments that people put on Facebook when I posted, it was just so much love and understanding because I love my readers so much. My readers tend to be middle-aged women who've been through a lot, who are the kindest people in the world, who understand that life is messy and things change. And I think everyone gets that my life didn't end on the last page of Eat, Pray, Love. That story ended. But my life continued on and I had to live forward into it. And when Rhea...
I'm just going to read the post. I'm separating from the man whom many of you know as Felipe, the man whom I fell in love with at the end of Eat, Pray, Love journey. And I hope you'll understand and forgive me if I'm a bit absent from social media during this sensitive moment. So I know you to be a woman who actually lives with your heart open. I'm wondering, were you concerned at the time about actually upsetting the readers? Were you?
No.
You were not?
I wasn't. I had such bigger fish to fry, Oprah. You know, I was going through the most important person I had ever known, the most important person in my life was dying. I was separating from the man I loved because I knew I had to. And again, you know, it almost felt like, this may sound odd to say, it didn't feel like a decision that I made. It felt like I was obeying a mandate. Mm-hmm. There was something that I had to do.
To take care of Rhea.
To take care of Rhea and to take care of her as her partner and as her lover, and to acknowledge that she was the love of my life.
So later in that same year, you posted, I'm just doing this for all the people who...
Catch them up.
Okay, catch them up. For all the people. That there is something I wish to tell you today, something which I hope and trust you will receive with grace. This spring, I received news that would change my life forever. My best friend, Rhea, was diagnosed with pancreatic and liver cancer, a disease for which there's no cure. The moment I first learned of Rhea's diagnosis, a trapdoor opened at the bottom of my heart. A trapdoor I didn't even know was there. And my entire existence fell straight through that door. Death, or the prospect of death, has a way of clearing away everything that is not real. And in that space of stark and utter realness, I was faced with this truth. I do not merely love Rhea, I am in love with Rhea. Okay. I actually read that post that, you know, when you posted it.
And you reached out to me very kindly, as did a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, that's it. That was it.
And you've described your love for Rhea as a life-shattering truth. As a life-shattering truth.
You know,
Did you surprise yourself when you fell in love with her?
No. And not only that, it didn't surprise her or anyone who knew us. And I mean anyone. People's reactions went from, duh, to, I thought you guys had been secretly having an affair for years.
Really?
To a friend of Rhea's who wrote back, in other news, ice is cold. You know, like, you know, this is the most obvious thing. It was so obvious to all of us, you know, or we'd been wondering when you guys were going to notice. But
because when I saw you all, and you hadn't announced it yet, but you all were like actually holding hands, and you were looking into each other's eyes, and you were like giddy.
We were so intimate
that I was like, what's going on here?
But I was so determined to not cross that boundary, and it was so important to me to be a faithful and honest wife, and I believe I was. You know, I believe I was, because the minute that clarity came to me, and I mean the minute, the next conversation I had was with my husband. There was no way that I could know this about myself, that I was in love with Rhea, and he couldn't know that. I felt that that would be so unfair.
Right.
And so instantly that conversation happened, and instantly our decision was made that we would separate.
Wow.
It was so fast, because he knew too. Everybody knew, you know, and it was Rhea. I mean, it was a special, and she was dying. There was no time for, it just cleared everything away, and it was so obvious that this is what had to occur. And I felt, at the moment that I found out that she was dying, I had a vision, and it was the worst thing I've ever seen. And I saw it like a movie. And the vision was, I mean, I knew I would be the one taking care of Rhea. I knew I would be with her every moment. I knew I would be with her at the moment of her death. I had this movie that I saw, and it was me in a hospital room, watching Rhea die, holding her hand, having taken care of her through her death, and her leaving this world never having known what she was to my heart. And then me going on the rest of my life and no one ever having known, and nothing ever being said about it. And it was so
So you had a vision
appalling.
of this.
I had a vision of that.
Okay.
And it was so appalling. My soul was appalled, is the only way I can describe it. My soul was appalled that I will not let that happen.
Yeah, I was going to say, you couldn't let that happen.
I will not let that happen.
Yeah.
And
because that would have been akin to dying.
I would have died with her.
A slow.
I would have died with her.
Yeah, death yourself.
And the rest of my life would have been a parched post-apocalyptic landscape, honestly. That's what I saw.
Had you been honest with yourself up until that point? You had not?
To an extent, but it was just sort of like, nothing will ever come of this. I will never cross this line. I will never cross this line. And then when I went and told her my feelings, she always laughed at me, because she said, you sounded like you were in third grade. You said, do you like me that way? Do you like me that way? And
Really?
she said, I said,
how soon after you had the feeling did you tell?
Within a week.
Within a week.
She said, how can I be so happy and dying at the same time? She was so happy. And she said, I never dreamed in a million years. I never dreamed that we would have this. But when I told her, I love you, I said, what does that feel like? And she said, it feels like prophecy.
Wow.
Prophecy. And she said, I feel like 1,000 angels just breathed into my heart.
Coming up.
I want to be fully woke and open here. Had you ever had a feeling of loving a woman before? Or it doesn't not even matter if it's a woman or not a woman?
I think it matters in the least. You know, that piece of it was, to me, in my post when I announced it, it didn't even occur to me to sort of address that. Love is love.
It didn't even cross your mind?
It didn't even cross my mind. It really didn't.
You are a highly elevated human being.
I don't know about that, but I do know that I throw my heart into the world like the way they shoot T-shirts out of T-shirt cannons in concerts. You know, I mean, that's how I love. It's that big.
And so, what did loving her through until the end teach you about life and love?
An enormous amount of humility, because I had this idea that I was going to be the world's greatest caregiver, and that I would sort of honestly be kind of a hero. And I was broken by the burden, and the burden is not the right word, it was savage going through that. And there were other elements of it, too, that arose. Rhea had been a heroin addict for years as a young person, and she'd been sober for 19 years. And when they put her back on opioids for the enormous pain that she was in, it kicked up all of that again. And she went into a very dark spiral with the drugs that she was on. And I essentially felt as though I had lost her before I lost her. I was prepared to lose her to death, but I wasn't prepared to see her descend into addiction again. She came out of it miraculously. And the humility was that
because you stopped everything to be by her side.
Dropped my entire life to take
all your scheduling, you stopped the writing.
I remember the day she was diagnosed, going through my inbox and deleting every single email. I don't care. I don't care about anything except her. I don't care. Nothing in the world matters except her. And there got to a point where anybody who's been a caregiver, especially for somebody who's not an easy patient, and Rhea was not an easy patient. She was a very powerful, strong, you know, independent, ferocious person in many ways. It broke me. And who ended up rescuing me was Rhea's ex-wife from 10 years ago and her ex-girlfriend from 20 years ago, who showed up like angels and stepped in and said, you can't do this alone. And the three of us ended up taking care of her while she was dying. And the humility that I experienced, where these women showed up, gave up their lives for their ex-partner to come and help her current partner take care of the woman we all loved. And it ended up being the most beautiful act of love I've ever seen. Was not me giving up my life to take care of Rhea, but Gigi and Stacy giving up their lives to take care of me while I took care of Rhea.
Because I heard that she went out fighting.
Fighting tooth and nail. I mean, she was a thug.
Yes.
She was it's why we all loved her. She was a massive personality, and she was obstinate, and she was the alpha wolf in every situation. And, you know, she did not humble herself before death.
I love your truth in it. Your vision from the beginning was that I'm going to be Florence Nightingale. I'm going to be there by your side. I'm going to be all the things. And then
try that after 8 days of no sleep, and a patient who's in constant pain and who's lost her own patience with you. And I mean, you can't. If you're the caregiver and the primary, most important person of your life is dying, someone needs to be taking care of you. You know, that's what Gigi and Stacy
hear that, folks.
Somebody needs to be taking care of you, because you can't be the hero. You're also dying.
Yeah.
Because you're also losing this person at the same time, and you're going through your own emotional trauma.
Wow.
So that was the humility, where I had to surrender to the fact that I can't do this myself. And then these women showed up and just held me so that we could all take care of her together. It was the most beautiful act of love I've ever witnessed in my life.
So were you all there for the last moment?
Yeah. Yeah, we were. And she went down like Rhea. I mean, she went down swinging. It was not a peaceful, graceful, Zen death. It was a Rhea Elias death. But that's how her life was. She was such a force of nature, like a storm at sea. And it was brutal, and it was beautiful, and it was true to who she was. And it was an honor to be there.
Could you feel the soul leave the body?
Yes. In fact, I swear I thought I heard it there were two things that happened in that moment that cannot have happened. And I saw, and I swear I saw her arch, and she didn't because she had no strength. But I swear, in my memory in that moment, I saw her arch, and I heard a breaking sound, like glass breaking. I heard it. But in that next instant after she died, Rhea had an expression on her face of absolute satisfaction. I mean, it was beyond happiness. I don't know what it was, but whatever she saw, whatever she was going into, she was just like, yes. The look on her face was absolute radiance. That brought me an enormous amount of comfort, too.
Coming up. You said that it's an honor to be in grief and that you understood you had to have a willingness to accept that all that grief brought. What does that mean, a willingness?
Oh, so my whole thing, Oprah, is just, I think willingness is my word. You know, when I said I came here to live a life, what I mean is that I agreed to have the life that was given to me, and I'm willing for it to be this one, whatever it is. And the honor in grief is the rejoicing of having loved somebody so much that their departure breaks you. Not everybody has that. Not everybody has ever loved anybody that much. And so within all the sadness and the sorrow of the loss, there's this heightened, stubborn rejoicing that my heart felt of, we did that, you know? We did that, we had love, we knew that, and we did that together. And the willingness is to feel both of those things at the same time.
What did you learn about yourself that you didn't know before through Rhea's death?
Mercy. There was a quality of mercy that I had to learn. Rhea had always been a teacher of mercy for me through her example. Rhea had such a battered life in many ways. She had been a drug addict. She had been a criminal. She had been a felon. She'd been in jail. She'd been in rehab centers, mental hospitals, homeless. She'd been beaten down.
Well, that's why she went out like a thug.
That's why she went out like a thug, exactly. And that's why she doesn't have a grave. She has a placard on the park bench in Tompkins Square Park where she used to sleep when she was homeless. That's where she wanted her memorial.
Wow.
Because she survived all that, and she was so proud of it. But having been so defeated by her addictions and her compulsions, having been thrown away by so many people, having been sent to jail, having slept on prison floors, she had a humility where she understood when she saw other people's bad behavior, she had an understanding that there's a person inside of there. Because she remembered, she said, even when I was an addict, she said, I knew I was a good person, I just didn't know how to be. And so and she was bad. And she said, after I came out of that, I had to ask so many people for forgiveness, and they forgave me, that I can never withhold mercy from anybody. It's what I owe, because I was shown mercy. And I learned mercy from her, but I also had to find it for myself, because I failed myself so many times in taking care of Rhea. I wanted to be Florence Nightingale. I wanted to be the hero. I wanted to never lose my patience. I wanted to be the best caregiver in the world, because I want to be the best everything in the world.
Because you're a perfectionist.
Because I'm a perfectionist.
Yes.
And so I held myself to that standard, and I failed because you can only fail at that. And later,
You failed, but you learned so much more.
I failed that the point is not to come here. You know, Rhea said it at the very end to me. She said, your job was never to be the best caregiver. Your job is to find mercy for yourself. That's your job, Liz. That's your work on earth.
I read that since her death, that you write to her, you talk to her, that she's helped you in the grieving of her.
Yeah, well, the deal was, I can't live without her, so I don't. I can't live without her, so I don't. When I need her, I call her. And I discovered that if I
understand
voice
that.
recorder on your phone. So try this, those of you in grief. It's kind of, you got to go with me on this, but I find that if I push that voice recorder button and go to a quiet place and say, hey, Rhea, and start talking to her like I'm leaving her a voicemail message, something about the fact that it's being recorded makes me feel like it's being received. And I'll have these hour-long phone conversations into my phone talking to her, and I feel like she's receiving it. And I feel like she's telling me what to do when I ask her for advice. Sometimes I can feel like I hear her voice, and other times she'll just put an image in my mind of something from her past to show me, oh, it's like that. Remember that situation? Remember what we did then? This is how you need to get through that. And I also write to her. I pick up my laptop and I'll just write, I need to talk to you. And the first time I did it, I felt like such a freak that I was doing it, but I was crying, I was missing her, and I was sobbing, and I said, hey, Ray, I need to talk to you, and I'm really afraid this isn't gonna work. And she goes, well, you better not try it then. In her voice, typing through my hands, better not try it then if it might not work. And I started laughing, and it sounded so much like her that I said, is this you? And she said, if you believe it is, it is. And
she says this
as I'm typing through her voice, if you
that's
believe
some woo-woo stuff, I gotta tell you.
And you know what, Oprah? I don't know whether
that is
it
some
is.
woo-woo.
I don't need to know what it is.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know whether it's her spirit typing through my hands or if it's that she's so braided into me at this point that I know what she would say because I knew her better than I've known anyone.
It doesn't kind of matter.
It doesn't matter. It comforts me, and I ask for advice, and I get it. And it's because I've internalized her.
Coming up, I know this Super Soul and this podcast is going to come at just the right moment for so many people who are fearing the loss and fearing the grief. What do you want to say to them about it?
I love you. I love you. That's all I want to say. I love you. You are walking through the darkest thing that you may ever face, and you will survive it. And you don't have to know how now. You don't have to know how tomorrow, and you don't have to know how the day after tomorrow. But somehow you will walk through this, as everyone has, you know? And you may spend the rest of your life walking with a limp for what you've been through and the loss that you have. But you can do it. I would say to lean into the idea of the honor. I know that it may be too soon for certain people to hear that. They're like, screw your honor. I want my husband back. I want my daughter back. I want my
sister back,
sister back. You know, I don't see the honor in that. But you remember Richard from Texas from Eat, Pray, Love? Yeah, I asked him one time, what do you think about death, Richard? Because he was one of the wisest people I ever met. And he said, well, all I know about it is it seems to take everybody by surprise. And I don't know why, because it's literally the only thing that is in the contract. It's the
for all of us.
Only guaranteed thing, and yet every time it happens, we're shocked.
Even when you're prepared for it.
Even when you've been preparing for it your entire life, you know? And I don't know what's on the other side, but I know that to help somebody, Rhea used to say to me, I just want you to walk me to the edge of the river. You know, and she'd say, I don't know what the river is, but I want you with me right to the edge of the river. And to get to, not to have to, but to get to walk with somebody to the edge of the river is the greatest honor I've ever had in my entire life. To be chosen by somebody, to be the one who wants you with them at the end of their life is the greatest honor I've ever experienced.
Yeah, I can see that.
You know, this is love.
Because by the time you get there and you know you're headed to the edge of the river, you only want the people who are the purest and the truest.
That's it.
Yeah. You only want that to do that walk.
That's right.
With the people who you know are real. There is just no room for bullshit.
And for people's feelings, because there are a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Rhea was very beloved, and there were a lot of people who wanted to be on that walk. And she was like, and I remember her saying to some friends who were angry that they were being cut out of this last piece of her life. And she said, I cannot take care of you right now.
Yeah.
I cannot take care of you right now. I am dying.
You don't want
Go
people
have your feelings about it.
who have to have their own needs taken care of, and you're doing it to,
If you're going to be in the room with me while I'm dying, you do not make me take care of you.
Whoa.
And she said it flat out to them. And if they started doing that in the room, she would send them out.
Really? Yeah.
She's like, I'm not sitting here watching you cry at me.
I would have to think that if ever you were going to be in the truth of yourself and not worried about what other people are thinking, it's when you're walking to the edge of that river.
She was kind of like that anyway, even on a good day. But like when there were no more when all the stakes were pulled up, that was it. You know, she didn't have time to baby anybody. She was like, you know, be here helping me or go.
Where do you think Rhea is now? Where do we go? Where does a soul go?
We don't get to know that, you and I, but I was talking about this recently with somebody else whose best friend died young. And she said, you know, I can't believe we lose these, like, of all the people, like, I've got a list of, there's something so unjust about when people are taken and who is taken, right? I mean,
Or it feels that way.
it feels that way, you know, like, God, of all people in the world, you had to take that one. You know, the world is full of these horrible people, you had to take this one. She and I were talking about this feeling that we have where, for the first time in my life, and I think you have this because you've spoken about this with Maya. I have a very powerful ambassador on the other side now.
Yeah.
And I've never felt like that before.
Yeah.
And I've lost people that I loved, but I felt that they couldn't do much for me.
Yes.
But Ray is strong.
Yes.
And like in the way that Maya is strong. And it's like, I feel like I have
But you know what I think it is?
member on the other
Yes,
side now.
you know what it is? What I have sensed, and I don't know how I know it or feel it to be true. And when friends have lost people that they loved and truly loved them, it's about the love connection.
Yeah.
When somebody has loved you, really loved you, that's how they become an ambassador for you on the other side. It's not everybody who's ever passed,
Right.
but it's why people who've had really strong relationships with their mothers, I now say, you have an angel you can call by name.
Yeah.
And for my mother, we didn't have a strong relationship in her human form, in this form, but it's better now that she's gone.
Well, she doesn't. Can I tell you my? I want to
Yeah,
know
go
your
ahead.
understanding
Yeah.
of it first. What's your understanding of why that is? Because I haven't thought about that.
Well, she never knew me on this side. She never really knew who I was. And when she got to the other side, that was the first time she actually could see who I was.
Wow.
Yeah,
And you feel that.
I feel that.
You feel that because you hear her tell you that, or you feel
I
it kind of
feel
in
that
your body.
It's in my body. It's
Yeah,
in
'cause that's where I
it's just a knowingness. I can't explain how I
Yeah.
know it. I know it. Ah, she got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard this before of people talking about difficult parents, especially, that when somebody very difficult that you loved dies, now on the other side, they don't have an ego anymore. They don't have any more
That's
stories,
right.
and they don't have any more pathologies. All they have is love.
That's right.
So all of that gets clear. She couldn't see you because she couldn't see you
Yeah.
through all that hedge of ego and her own pain and whatever her thing was. And then when that's gone, the only
Yeah.
thing left is love. The only thing left is love.
Yes.
And then you can, love sees everything.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah. I feel that strongly.
I do too.
Coming up, have you had any other transcendental or mystical experiences?
I've had a lot of them around Rhea, I have to say, but I think it's just because she's so powerful. When Rhea was being cremated, Gigi, her ex-wife, who is my sister now, the two of us decided to go and watch because we felt like that was part of our contract with her, to take her to the edge of the river, that we would watch
The cremation.
Because Rhea had said she was afraid of being left alone after she died, and so we said, we'll be right with you right till the last flame. It takes hours for a body to burn, and we sat there for hours praying, singing hymns.
Does it take
meditating,
hours?
Hours. And it should, because it's so epic. You know,
Yes, I know
somebody's
it's epic,
leaving.
but I would think it just...
No, it takes hours. It
Oh
takes
my
hours.
gosh, I didn't know
And so
that.
we just sat there in this warehouse, in this cold warehouse together, a lot of it in silence and meditation, in prayer, in song, just guiding, feeling like we were guiding her soul into the flames and out into life. And my bag was sitting down here at the next
Is she
to me.
like in a furnace or a
Yeah,
tomb? Or...
in a furnace, which they closed the door of, but we'd asked them to open so we could sort of
Watch her burn.
see her. Yeah.
You walked to the edge
Right to the edge.
and on into the fire.
Would have gone. I mean, and I tell you, Oprah, seeing that, she looked like a Viking king. The nobility, the beauty of watching her turn from earth to flame, from matter to flame was so beautiful. And I said,
I've never met anyone who's done that.
Gigi and I are weird that way. We just felt we had to. And Gigi said, we looked at her in flame, and Gigi said, I've never seen her look more like herself. Because she was that. She was just this force of flame and power. She was an Aries, you know? So just watching her, it was just extraordinary. And 3 hours in, my bag is right next to me. My phone starts playing one of her favorite songs. No one's touched it. I don't have Siri. And this Van Morrison song starts playing out of nowhere.
On your...
While her soul is ascending. And Gigi and I just get up and start dancing. We're like, okay. I know.
So
you know me, I'm pretty
telling
comfortable.
me that you're sitting there watching her going up in flame, and your purse is just there, and no one's touched the purse, and the music starts coming out of it. Okay.
I don't know how things work. I just know that it's an interesting ride. I wouldn't miss a minute of it. I said that to Rhea right up 2 days before she died. She said, you've been through hell with me. And I said, I wouldn't miss a minute of this. Not a minute of this. I'd do it all over again.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you back.
Thank you so
Oh
much.
my God. Woo! That's amazing.